Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. This is Alejandro, and welcome to a new episode of the X Button. So, I will be hosting today's show, and with me, it's always my uh, voluminous, my cuddly, very delayed Christmas posting guy named Paul Edwards. How are you doing, Paul?
Oh, hey, buddy, how's it going? Man, I didn't expect to get called out on posting my Christmas pictures so late like that, like this. I got
yeah, when I,
ambushed on day one. Golly.
yeah, that's why I was trying to just think of any funny thing to call you, but I'm just gonna be calling you the most random things. How you doing, Paul? It's
I'm
been a
doing
week.
all right today. I'm having a fun little day so far. We'll see what kind of nonsense I have to do at some points. Uh,
Yeah,
but until then,
because of the day that we're recording.
yes.
So, for everyone that knows, we always record a little bit ahead from before we post any episode. So today's Valentine's Day. So,
Yeah.
Paul, what are your big Valentine's Day plan?
Well, I do want to preface with what I was saying earlier, the kind of nonsense that I had to deal with. That was not the Valentine's Day. I was referring to job stuff that I would have to do. I am super excited um, for Valentine's Day. I did not realize that's what you were referring to.
Hmm.
So we are going to play it smart and not bother with Valentine's Day itself because everybody's going
Nice.
to try going on dinner and doing all that stuff. What we're going to do is tomorrow we're thinking of going to Rouse's. That's a local grocery store chain. Going to
Hmm.
a grocery store, getting some food, cooking it together, having like a candlelight dinner or something.
Yeah, nice.
So
So,
just
how does it? So you finally no longer feel the pressure because you're finally a kept man, and you're gonna be putting the ring later this year. So you don't have
yep,
to kind of do anything weird for this Valentine's Day because you already have a forever Valentine.
correct. It's been very nice. There's no pressure. I mean, she even asked me yesterday. I was like, "Do we even want to give gifts?" And I was like, "I'll give you a little something." And I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna give her like a little bit of chocolate, and she'll be fine with that. And as long as I spent time with her, so it's a pretty nice deal out of it. I get a best friend that's really smart, and
Hmm.
a nice dinner out of it.
Hey, it's gonna make your financials be very smart. Like
Yes.
they're gonna be very well like balanced going forward if she's already thinking this way before
Oh
even
yeah. Just
tying the knot. So
trying to be smart about it.
yeah. So for me, Valentine's Day is just another day. It's just my rest day. So I'll just be chilling. Hashtag forever alone.
Hmm.
Hashtag just kidding. But yeah, I have really no big plans. I have one of my better best friends that he has a birthday today, but he's gonna celebrate it tomorrow. He has the unlucky. He's unlucky that his birthday is exactly Valentine's Day every year.
Dang.
So he's always posting like grumpy cat gifs and memes
Oh my
on that
goodness.
day just because he's a singleton, so it's funny. But yeah, I'll just be chilling today because usually like my Fridays are my rest day, and we're recording this a little bit later because I was feeling a little bit under the weather the day before, but I'm feeling a little better now. And the good thing is that something really cool came out around this time, which is like probably the biggest thing for us as a show because finally we I can talk about like a new game finally. But before I talk about it, Paul, you know the usual rigmarole. What have you been playing, seeing, or hearing?
All right. Well, I haven't been fully thinking ahead on this one, so it's going to be off the top of my head. I
Hmm.
have started playing a little bit of Bioshock 2. Um,
Let me guess, because of the PlayStation Plus free game.
Absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
technically already owned it on disc, which kind of sucked, but since it was there, I was like, I'll download it, try it out. And it really made me appreciate the environment for sure, just
Hmm.
how well they create an atmosphere. And also, I'd say it made me understand how even though BioShock Infinite did away with more of the claustrophobic feel, they really
Hmm.
did put across that idea of like, yes, it all looks amazing, but there's something deeply wrong underneath. And
Hmm.
like you kind of get this feeling of that right when you start the game as well. Because I tried a little bit of that too. That's probably one of my all-time favorite games.
Hmm.
And Yeah, it was just it was a lot of fun. Let me think if I've played anything else. I went back to GTA 5 for like a brief second because they had this deal going on where they give you $1 million if you just log in for a
Hmm.
certain day.
For the GTA Online.
Yeah, so I jumped into that, and honestly, I forgot how much fun it is to just randomly drive around the city and just go up the mountain and stuff like that. It is a lot. It was a
Have you
lot.
tried the races in GTA Online? Because
Oh, dude,
I
yes.
was watching some of like the videos. Like, those things are nuts. It's like it's almost Mario Kart level of like weird
Yeah,
level design in those races. It's
it is.
nuts.
If any of y'all have seen Ready Player One, it is just like that first race where everything's going nuts. There's ramps going all over the place. People are dying, blowing up everywhere, and you're trying to figure out how to get through all of that in the process. And I swear that was some of the like most intense gaming moments I've had is just in a race in those in that game. And that's probably the best thing that I would consider I used to do back in the day. That was my mainstay. I just got on the races and just went through
Hmm.
it. So much fun.
Nice.
As far as seeing and hearing, I found like a bootleg website that had like a bunch of movies, of course, like illegally downloaded on there. So I was able to get to watch what was it? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I
Oh, what do
never.
you think? What do you
I
think?
That was an interesting thing. So I did not realize it was about the Manson family murders because I
Hmm.
know nothing about that. So all of those like subtle hints, like the tenseness, like did not resonate with me because I didn't realize like who these characters were,
Hmm.
and how like, oh my gosh, they're at this house and that means this is about to happen and blah blah blah. And I was like, what's
Hmm.
going on? Why are these people here? And after the fact, when I finished it, I was like, I really enjoyed it. Overall, I was like kind of a weird disjointed mess, but I loved like
Hmm.
everybody was a great actor in that. I love
Brad
how they,
Pitt.
you
The
know,
scene with when Brad Pitt gets like broken in into his house and he just like starts laughing. I'm
spoiler
like,
alerts, by the way.
who
Um,
cares? It's like they would have seen it already.
oh come on! I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't see it until like 2 days ago, so
yeah. But it's just
but
us.
yeah,
People already had seen it. But
true,
that's just as contextless of a scene it is. But that scene with Brad
true.
Pitt and the
Yeah,
dog,
he
yeah,
did a
it's.
very good job with that. What was another good acting moment? I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio when he was playing the Western guy, really
Hmm.
plays it up, and he starts like crying. Um,
Hmm.
because he basically played like three different or maybe four different characters in the course of that movie, and he had to like play them differently. Whenever he was playing as that person, they'd say cut, and he was back to being Rick Dalton, and then they say action, and he's back to playing the Western cowboy characters that he is. Made me realize just how versatile he is at doing his
Hmm.
job. Um, and I think I watched this video actually before I even watched the movie. It was Quentin Tarantino himself and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was like Wired or something, one of those YouTube channels where they break down a character or a scene from a movie. And I love that stuff because it gets really cerebral, really like you see the passion behind it. And so Quentin
Hmm.
Tarantino starts talking about this whole backstory he created that's not even in the movie of like who this guy is, what did he do, what kind of shows he did, like just the details of how this guy went into the efforts. And he said like he's even an undiagnosed bipolar disorder, but like you never say that, it's just part of the character. And just
Hmm.
made me appreciate the effort that they go into to create these characters, you know.
Hmm. Nice. So, anything else that you've been watching?
um I don't think. Oh, you know what? I started watching Better Call Saul. That
Oh,
spinoff of
so you
Breaking
had not
Bad.
seen that before?
Now, okay, I'll preface that. I watched the first two seasons when they were coming out with one of my old roommates, but then he moved out and we got rid of our cable box.
Oh.
And I just stopped really caring about it. But I knew I
Hmm.
was like kind of engaged by the idea. I will say I'm one of those people that's like, just like you with games, where you got to have people that respect your time. I feel like it kind of just goes overboard
Hmm.
with how long the episodes are. And like, there's whole moments where I'm like, this shot could have been cut down by like 45 seconds.
Mm.
And I feel like I catch those often enough. But at the same time, it's great TV. The guy that plays Jimmy McGill, of course, I can't
Hmm.
remember his name, but he does an amazing job with acting. Everybody in that show does a really good job. And just coming across like the dialogue is really both snappy and
Hmm.
grounded. Like it's
Hmm.
not this waxing poetic all the time. It's like they're regular dudes being awkward and like stumbling over their words
Hmm.
sometimes. But at the same time, it's a really intense show, and I love it.
Yeah, the main actor's name is Bob Odenkirk, who plays Jimmy McGill, who also eventually becomes Saul Goodman
Right.
from the main series. So yeah, Better Call Saul. I would even argue, as of right now, it's becoming an even more compelling series than Breaking Bad
Really.
because just like, I think once you go through seasons 3 and 4, you will probably start seeing why I mean that, because I just seeing Jimmy's transformation, like how like the things that breaks down with his brother,
Hmm.
played by Michael McKean. Um, that's where like it's really starting to hit. You think about kind of like how much more powerful being a prequel and knowing where he ends up starts feeling when you start seeing how everything just starts coming together. And yeah, I recommend you keep watching it. It's amazing. It's really amazing, really
Nice.
amazing TV. So, anything you've been hearing, Paul, or have you been seeing something else?
Uh, I've just been working on my the that audio book that I've been working through by
Hmm.
Brent Weeks, the Lightbringer series. I found out. So to anybody that's listening in, I've been working on a book for a while now. Just like kind of simple, like overcoming adversity, modern fantasy, fighting demons, that usual stuff. But um, it's been more of like a personal project of mine.
Hmm.
Well, go lo and behold, like I've mentioned, the similarities that my power system ended up having with this series, and the main villain's name that they just released in the third book ends up being the exact same name as the main villain in my story that I've been working on for about 11 years now. And
Nice.
that kind of caught me off guard, where it was kind of weird just like listening to it, not paying attention, and then they're like, "Oh, that's his name," and I was like, "What the heck, people? How do you think of this?" Um, which was a really unfortunate moment. So I'll probably have to change the name of the villain and figure that out. But it was just like a
Nice.
weird moment. I know, like I'm confirmed that I must have had a good enough idea that this other dude made a best-selling book series off it.
Don't you hate when that happens? Whenever you think that you're getting creative, there's always someone.
Yeah.
There's always someone that also thought your same idea, and then you're like, why didn't I think this? Because my mom always keeps asking me, like, I know you like writing. Why don't you create something? I'm like, I don't feel I'm creative enough because I feel like every cool idea that I could have had has already been done. So
Ooh.
so yeah.
Actually, exactly what you said spurred one last thing that I want to share that I saw today, maybe like 2 days ago. There was
Hmm.
a roundtable video on YouTube of a bunch of different screenwriters. So they had like John Krasinski, Bo Burnham.
Hmm.
They had shoot, that was the two that I recognized off the top of my head. But they had like a bunch of there was like 6 or 7 different writers from like really old down to Bo Burnham, who's like I think in his 20s, and they would talk about different writing techniques that they've used and like different ideas and passions, advice that they had. It's like an hour long, and they talk about all sorts of different things. So one of the things they touched on that I wanted to bring up was that like everything has technically been done as far as like writing and style, and like somebody's done it, but there's no reason you can't also reinvent the wheel because everybody's kind of done that. But why not just like do it in your own way, because you're always going to take your own experiences into something,
Hmm.
even if it's so similar. You're still going to have your own identity somewhere in that. And they say don't worry about if somebody's done something before. Tell your story and it'll like kind of find its own voice on its own, because if they like stopped writing because everything's technically been done, then there's no more stories to be written.
Yes, that's a solid point. How sometimes like the best ideas have been like bounced off from other ideas, and kind of like just that constant back and forth is where sometimes the new ideas can come up. It's just always trying to get out above the hurdle of thinking, oh, maybe someone has already done this. It's always just taking that leap and finding that own voice. And yeah, that's something that I've been struggling trying to getting over with, but yeah, you should just give it a shot in a way. So
Yeah, but that's what
yeah.
I've been playing, seeing, and hearing. Alejandro, what you got?
So from seeing, I went to see Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which I will just say, what a horrible name for a movie! What a horrible name to just say, and what a mouthful!
I didn't
And
even
it's
know that second part was part of the title itself.
yes, it is. And then the son of, and because the movie has become like a little bit of a box office disappointment, let's say, like, not people are like, they have been changing the title, like when you go to like some online tickets, now they're calling it Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey, which is hilarious that
Wow.
they that the marketing and like the focus testing didn't catch that this would be
Right.
a problem, especially because the Birds of Prey are not like the characters, like the Black Canary and the
Hmm.
Huntress and all of that, are not are not as mainstream known as some people would want them to be. Like they're very like very niche. The big name in this movie was Harley Quinn, obviously, and Harley Quinn is very well known. So putting that aside, just calling it Birds of Prey, even though it's practically a Harley Quinn movie, I don't know why they did, but besides the marketing mishap and the movie is apparently not doing well at the box office, what a fun movie! It's incredibly funny. I think last time I laughed this much at like a superhero movie, well, quote unquote superhero movie, was the Deadpool movies. Have you seen that the Deadpool movies,
I have.
Paul? Yeah, so it has almost the exact same humor, kind of like the fast paced, like jokes after jokes after jokes, kind of like the over the top violence. There's like some of the things that they do with Niece is very cringy, cringe inducing what it does, but just like seeing like how this movie is kind of like a course correction for the Suicide Squad
Mhm.
almost, because that Suicide Squad movie from 2016 was beyond horrible. It was like so mismanaged, it completely missed the point, and it felt like it wanted to be something edgier than it was allowed to be. And I'm kind of glad that this one, even though I know for some people the R rating was maybe unnecessary, and I can kind of see why it would be, but it feels like it feels unique in a way. Like it's an action comedy romp in the DCEU that, especially with the DCU being a little bit more like dark and dreary, that only started finding some light with like Wonder Woman and the Aquaman movie and even Shazam. It's really cool seeing that they're really embracing more like a director mandated, or more like director focused movies where like they're letting the style of a known director, in this case a female director named Kathy Yates, if I'm not mistaken, make the film feel more like unique to its own personality. Because like one of my things with like the MCU, for example, as much as a lot of those movies are like at the baseline they're all pretty good, it's very few times that you get the ones that are like a pure representation of their directors or like a unique style, like James Gunn in the Guardians of the Galaxy, or Taika Waititi and Thor Ragnarok. I think I mentioned that. Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the previous episode when we were talking about Doctor Strange. So I'm really glad to see that DC is embracing that a little bit more and is making at least their unique, at least from a visual perspective, unique. And this one being good, it really, they have been doing more goods than bad, more good movies than bad movies now, because they started bad.
Hmm.
But if you count Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, even the Elseworlds Tale that's Joker, and now this one, that's more good than bad now. So I feel they're finally shifting the narrative around that they sunk themselves deep in after Batman versus Superman. So, um, are you planning on seeing this, Paul?
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced yet. I was actually kind of positive thinking about it because y'all were talking about how it was surprising y'all and it was good. And then I got online with a couple of my friends last night,
Mm-hmm.
and two of them absolutely trashed it. They were
Huh.
like, "This was terrible. It wasted my time. I just did not get into it." Like one of them doesn't like Harley Quinn, and the other
Oh,
ones were
okay.
like,
Got
"Okay,
it.
hold on." So that's like his thing. That was his personal deal. The other one loves Harley Quinn, but he just doesn't. He doesn't think that was enough to
Hmm.
really take care. You could almost say it doesn't emancipate the film enough. And I hear it's because it's like the fact that it's Birds of Prey, it still technically kind of surrounds all of them, but
Hmm.
they said that the biggest issue was that every time Harley Quinn wasn't on screen, it just became a lot slower, a lot more boring
Hmm.
to them.
Yeah, and that's why I'm telling you that and I feel that was kind of a little bit of a miscalculation because Harley Quinn herself, like the way Margot Robbie plays it, it's borderline perfection. Like especially because I've also been watching the Harley Quinn animated series from the DC Universe app, which is like a
How's
adult
that?
R-rated comedy, and it's really funny. It's really really good, and I would say this movie is like a lesser version of that. But I'm glad that a movie at least kind of got close to the greatness that is the Harley Quinn animated series. Especially what it does with so many different villain characters like Clayface and Scarecrow. It's really good. But and I would wonder if your friend is actually that you say that it's a big Harley Quinn fan is also watching that DC Universe animated series because if he's not, I would tell you go tell him to watch that because he's gonna be pleasantly surprised.
He definitely
So
is not because he does not have the streaming service, unfortunately. But I'll mention it to them next time. Maybe they'll think about it, or at least
yes.
pirate it like normal people.
Exactly. Even though I would say that the DC Universe app is slowly coming into its own with the Titan show, the Doom Patrol series. It had Swamp Thing that sadly got canceled, and now that one's like some of those shows are like better than they should have been, especially that Doom Patrol series. It's like adult X Men. Yeah, like or X Men done right, let's just say, because the Doom Patrol was like the version of the X Men in DC, even though they came first. X Men
Mm,
was always more popular, but Doom Patrol is always like almost borderline monstrous people that are completely misunderstood having to live with misery, and that series really captures that.
hmm,
Came out early last year, and it has Brendan Fraser as Robot Man,
yeah,
and yeah, saying dropping 10 million f-bombs in a hilarious way, especially it's funny coming from Brendan Fraser. But
yeah.
yeah, it's I would highly recommend that. And for people that have not seen Birds of Prey, yeah, if there's two of your friends didn't click with it, I thought it was fun, so I would recommend that, especially some movies finally starting coming out. Like today, the new Sonic movie comes out also, and it's surprisingly good. Apparently, what kind of deal with the devil happened that there's actually a Sonic movie that was well reviewed and well received?
Well, they
How
did. The animation studio that had to reset them must have done that because they shut down before the movie even came out.
exactly? That's probably the
That's the payment they had to
yeah,
give.
the payment they have to give. But hey, the props to them because remember that first trailer, the one
Oh
that had
yeah,
the what was the rap song?
I have
The
nightmares about it. It was Gangsta's Paradise.
Yeah, the Gangster's Fire. Yeah, that trailer was like,
I can't believe
um,
that.
yeah, it's like probably the most low beat song for like the guy that gotta go fast. But then
Hmm.
the second trailer with the reboot with the revamp, it was like, oh, this actually looks like really fun, and
Hmm.
especially seeing that Jim Carrey is going full Jim Carrey, like in his Ace Ventura and Liar Liar Lays.
Yeah.
I just kind of like whether I like the Sonic parts or not because I know I have been hit and miss with Sonic. I'm going just to see Jim Carrey because I miss that kind of like manic Jim Carrey comedy. And then, but yeah, that's all I've been seeing, hearing. Just my usual podcasts, the ones that always keep me informed about the ins and outs of this week. As for playing, before yesterday and today, I finally restarted my addiction and went back to play
Uh,
Destiny 2.
I knew
that
I saw you playing that last night.
Yeah, I was like, so the thing with Destiny for me, it's like I always like when I'm like taking breaks from it because I play so much else. Because as soon as I start playing that game, everything around my gaming life starts getting neglected because
Hmm.
it's so freaking addictive to me, especially that MMO loop. And the current season that we're on right now ends in like 25 days. So I'm trying to like rank up all the battle pass, and I'm at like a level 45, so I still have like 55 levels left to do in the next 25 days. But yeah, I've been playing with my clan a lot, and that I still stand by what I always say. Like the core gameplay loop of that game to me is my favorite in this generation. It's so addictive, and I like the feel of it. So, but the good thing is that I also did a little distracted by a little game that came out this week that I kind of mentioned last week, and I kind of wanted to make it a topic of the show, even though I don't think you have played it, Paul. So,
I have not, but I am curious to hear what our topic is, Alejandro.
okay, so press X for topic of the show, Paul.
I pressed it. Now what?
Tanan, tan, tanan, tan, tananan. So, yeah, man, we really have to start figuring out the songs
Honestly, I
transition
feel
for
like
this
we
one.
should just play, make our own little sound bites of
Yes.
humming some random song that's in our head.
Yeah,
That'll
so
make
that
it even
people
better.
know so people know the grassroots uh, origins of this podcast and our production value. So after 9 years of waiting and 9 long years of experimentation, finally, Media Molecule, the guys that made Little Big Planet back on PS3,
Hmm.
finally released the game. And like what I mentioned last week, yeah, it's that's Dreams. It's their latest evolution of their play, create, share mantra, where this time around they have really gone overboard with the creation thing because wow, but like I have never seen. Just browsing yesterday when it came out, like close to midnight, and before just diving into like what's ostensibly like the quote unquote tutorial slash single player campaign,
Hmm.
I can see why that game took 9 years. You know that the entire game was made with the tool that they made on console.
Huh?
They made it the tool. Like, you know how did you make like a game engine? They make that entire game with a console.
Oh,
Like with
really?
the tool, with the tools that they created, everything that they set up, they did it with the tools. Especially like everything from like the campaign, like the so at the end, from the animation to the level design and all of that, that was made on the tool that they
Huh.
made. That it's like you have like a cursor that's something called the imp, and you're starting like you started moving it around with like your motion controls, which is really strange playing a game with the PS4 controller and remembering, oh yeah, this is a motion control. There's a reason why it has like the light bar because it's also PlayStation Move inside this controller. Uh, but yeah, that game you can literally, it's no joke. You can make literally any kind of game. Like this morning before I was before we hit recording, yeah, I was just toying around and seeing some of the creations. So there's been some people that have recreated the first the opening scene of Star Wars down to the scroll, the actual camera shots, and
What?
the yeah, literally all of that in fully voiced and all that. And obviously with the kind of jank that you can expect from someone that made a game from a tool like that. But
Right.
then like I see someone that made that recreated the original Tomb Raider on PS1 down to
Hmm.
like the animation and the way that the camera turns. There is someone that made Sonic the Hedgehog completed with like the song and like the actual animation of whenever you jump and then press X again to like do like the hammer attack and you grabbing all the coins and all that. Like it's incredible seeing that there's a tool this versatile and on console for people to like unleash creativity. And you know how I've always been harping that I've been wanting a little bit more uniqueness of games recently.
Hmm.
This is what I've been asking for because it felt like magic. Uh, Seeing something like that creative and that whimsical, especially coming from Sony, who was on PS3, the company that was willing to experiment, especially with their downloadable games and like some of the games that they were trying to like greenlit.
Hmm.
As we them getting so deep down the hole of third person open world action games or a variance of that, I had not realized what a breath of fresh air it would be just to like open that and just seeing like the bright colors, the English humor, like the very cutesy imps, them smiling at you when you're moving them with the motion controllers, and then you like possessing some weird things like weird triangles that are like all smiley and all that. It's like it's almost Nintendo like levels of whimsical, seeing like the tone that it carries itself through, especially in the levels and its levels of presentation. But then you play the story, which by the way is like 3 to 5 hours. Already beat it. Um, I will preface this by say if you're only buying this game, which by the way is only $39.99, so it's not even full priced. If you're only buying this game to be like, I just want to play a campaign on that, mm, I wouldn't recommend it for that
Yeah.
because even though like what it does with its story mode is something called the Art Dreams, which is like you follow this like failed musician called Art that's going on like a big depression because he like got kicked out of his band or something like that. And
Hmm.
like as you're going down like the down his mind as he starts just like dreaming and trying to deal with his depression and inner demons. That's why you start seeing like all these weird different amalgamations of games. So at one point that game becomes like a point and click adventure, kind of like those old PC games where you're kind of clicking around and moving around and like grabbing things and turning them around. Then suddenly it becomes Crash Bandicoot style platformer, like in the on a drop of a hat. Then it becomes like those twin stick shooters at times. Like and it flips back and forth. So it's like literally every kind of game that you can think of. It happens in the span of like that narrative of like everything happened in that guy's dreams as he's trying to like remember like an old dragon that he got when he was young, and he's trying to like save it from like this weird crow thing, and that's how you go through like the different levels, and it's like so seamless. And then there's like a music sections where someone they animated like a guy like going through like a whole like if, like some sort of musical, and you have to start like moving your motion controller to like grab some like bubbles. It's really really weird, and I am all for this weirdness because we don't have it's kind of like how Death Stranding was like in a very weird in the AAA space. This is like really this is art house. This is like a complete art house thing, and I fear it's gonna bomb commercially because it's incredibly abstract and it doesn't have anything recognizable, kind of like Little Big Planet that at least had Sackboy. So at
Mm-hmm.
the very least, you could look at Sackboy and at least associated that ball sack creature
Oh my gosh.
as a as like the face of that game, or like at least the
Yeah.
thing that reckoned in between all the creation, all that. Now they went completely the other in the opposite direction of making like a creation thing without something fully recognizable. Maybe the only thing that could be recognizable, especially when you're playing the campaign, is probably the robot from that you see from the playroom from whenever you first got the PlayStation. There was something called the playroom where there you can see some of the little robots,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you can see like this sort of teddy bear with a hammer that you kind of play around in some of like the platforming sections of that game. But in the end of the day, like that whole story mode created again all in the tools. So they waited to create the tools and put it in the PlayStation 4 and build the entire thing within the PlayStation 4, not from a PC. I
Jeez.
can understand why that took 9 years, because imagine just having to like record all the voices, put it in through the console, putting all this level
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what it can be done. So to me, it's like a really incredible technical achievement that they took this time. I don't know if it was the wisest investment because 9 years, that's a hell of a long time to like be working on something like this, especially when they're launching this thing at the tail end of console generation. Like
Mm-hmm.
that it's supposed to be carried by the creations, which by the way, because that game was in early access last year, which I didn't know because I'm not a creative person. So I was like, I'm not gonna buy this for to create things. Because that seems like too much too like if I struggle creating a Mario Maker level and that's freaking Mario, like now imagine like having to create something in a 3D space, which by the way people even created Dark Souls within this
Oh my
thing,
gosh.
complete with like bonfires and the same control scheme. You can even make menus. You can create menus with like the controller and say this button does this and all that. It's really crazy, and
Jeez.
I'm really glad that it came out today. And you know that it only weighs 6.4 gigabytes. It's like really small.
Huh.
Uh, but so because I that's the kind of game that I want to keep installed forever, because that's the kind of thing that's gonna live and die by the creation of the community and seeing.
Yeah.
I know back in the early access period, people recreated the X-wing fights from Rogue Squadron, and they even did the opening of Dead Space within the same tools of this. So yeah, from a technical perspective, I haven't been this impressed with a game in a long time, and it just had a huge smile on my face playing through that whole campaign. Because even when it got really serious, it's like it's really something. It reminds me why I like PlayStation, because this is where you can find these kinds of games. And
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, this is the place where you found these kinds of games, not just third person action games. So I really hope that in some way they at least find some sort of success, because I like developers like being able to express their artistic intent.
Mm-hmm.
So this feels like the full expression of developers that really wanted to make like a game creation tool, but make it as whimsical and as user friendly as it can possibly be. because I can assume it's very user friendly considering the kinds of things that people have created. I
Hmm.
mean, like, and that kind of versatility for them to create it. Because Little Big Planet, at the end of the day, it was like all of it was always a physics based side scroller. This is way more than that, and it's
Hmm.
really impressive. Do you plan on playing this, Paul?
If I find myself with the extra money and it ends up being popular enough, I would love to
Hmm.
go through and try it out because, like, I just don't have the time to be that like creative person that
Hmm.
I'd love to be on this. Like, I've got
Uh huh.
so many other things that, like, if
Yeah.
I feel creative, I would go to like my sketching or my writing. But
Hmm. And
like, I
apparently,
would
you can
love to try
sketch
it.
things, take pictures of that, and insert them into this game. You can do that.
Really,
Yes. Like just as you
that's
can record, yeah, and you can create your own music and put it into this thing. Also, like it's it
what?
yeah, it really is that
Hmm.
that open of a creation thing, and this will be a great tool for people that want to get into games, because if they have the creativity, because trying to get into games requires you to buy the Autodesk Maya suite, or probably going to like a university like Full Sail and all that to kind of get started. But if you want to start like building like a resume and stretching, let's see if your creativity um, starts building at like an early age, I can see Dreams being like a great tool for that. And they mentioned how they're wanting to make this engine like an engine where they can create games that then they can start selling eventually. Like
Hmm.
that's like how versatile of a tool this is. I wouldn't say that it's super super cutting edge, but some of the things that they're making is I'm surprised at the level of polish, because I've seen creation tools before, like Gary's mod, that's jank to a fault. so,
True.
so yeah, and to me it's like kind of like Mario Maker. For me was like I was not the creator guy, but I like being able to know that there's the creative people that are putting their levels there, just for me to always log in and see, okay, let's see what people have created. And for a while that's what I was doing with Mario Maker before I burnt out because of the stupid search tools, which at the very
Yeah.
least, Sony and Media Molecule being modern people, being modern developers with modern sales abilities compared to Nintendo. At the very least, their search tools are way more robust than something like Mario Maker. Obviously, I would argue Mario Maker is probably a better quote unquote game because it's Mario, and you can get more perfect than Mario. So that's why to me it's super impressive that Sony at the very least, I don't know how much of a loss they're gonna take because of waiting 9 years for this thing to come out,
Yeah.
but with the PS5 being backwards compatible in a way, I feel that at the very least this is not gonna get stranded. So so people that can buy it today, they'll be able to play it whenever they get their PS5 if they get it. And at the very least, it's not going to be like the original Mario Maker that was forever stranded on Wii U and a console that was dead
Hmm.
for all intensive purposes, compared to the PS4 that's 108 million consoles and kicking. Even though I don't know all the 108 million people are going to be playing this game, at least there's more of a sizable community that if it's like at least 1/100th of the player base gets a hold of this and just becomes like its own niche community, I can see it kicking around for a while and being something like really cool. And I feel that we need more of these kind of creative things in the gaming industry, especially in this generation of games as a service and all that. This is technically games as a service, but in a very unique way. Like a game is gonna be live instead of like the
Yeah.
homogeny that's been plaguing it. So if I were to review this, Paul, I would give it the full 5 out of 5.
No
The
kidding.
Yeah, the full for real. It's like it's really. I know it may not be for him, but for what it's trying to do on the with its tools and its whimsical nature and all of that is really impressive. And I haven't been this impressed with something this unique in a while. So props to them, because I've been waiting for a new game to play, and this will be a good appetizer before the tsunami hits us next month. So because it's still slowly coming, but it's still coming.
It's working its way there.
Yes, and I will hope maybe what I'm gonna do with you sometime, maybe I will account share so that you can try it, just so you can at least see some of it, because at the release I think you're gonna smile, and I just want like smiling. I like games that make me feel good, and I feel just seeing that kind of like whimsical nature really brings a huge smile on my face. So
Mm.
props to Media Molecule for like this long endeavor for them. It's like they probably they could have made 3 games in the span that it took them to make this one. So yeah, props to them. And for anyone listening to it, if you feel like you want something unique, at the very least, it's 39.99. If this would have been 59.99, I think it would have been a little bit of a harder sell. But 39.99, I feel that it's more value than the freaking Kingdom Hearts DLC that we played a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so by $9 more, no reuse content. Even though I really, you know what I'm super curious about? Copyright infringement. Like, I wonder how,
Yeah,
like, I can't wait for people to start making like Mario or anything, and if they're gonna get like copyright strike or something,
yeah, really
because this thing is that versatile for people to do that. If they're all to make Sonic, you can make everything in this
true.
thing, and yeah, it's gonna be remaining my console for a long time, and I really, really, really can't wait to see when even more creative minds start to like really break this thing open. And there's rumors that it's gonna be on PC eventually, not fully confirmed, but with Sony like doing the whole thing with Horizon, the rumors that they're trying to plan it on PC, I can't think of a better game for it to be open to as huge a wide audience as possible, like than PC like this, which is where a lot of people make games for. But just the fact that this was able to be made within a PS4 is pretty. That takes a lot of technical know-how.
True
So,
that.
so yeah, that was topic of the show because there really isn't much to say much about Dreams. It really is a creation tool that's incredibly impressive, and for what it is,
Hmm.
I'm glad that that's part of the PlayStation 4 ecosystem. It's just one more exclusive in a sea of great exclusives that that console has.
Yeah,
So,
they've been
Paul,
knocking it out of the park for sure.
yes, exactly, and this is the first one. Remember, we still have Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII remake, and Ghost of Tsushima as
Yep.
exclusives for this year. So, great
And
open,
did you say
great
Last
open
of
follow.
Us?
Huh?
Did you say Last of Us in that list?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Last
For
of
some
yes.
reason, like that one didn't register because I was so excited when you said the word Ghost of Tsushima. I just didn't hear
Yes.
anything else.
Yeah, it goes we started with Dreams right now, then it goes Final Fantasy 7, then Last of Us, and finally Ghost of Tsushima. So
True.
let's see which of those four ends up coming on top. My bet it'll be Last of Us, but to each their own. I'm excited for all of them. So all right, Paul. So yeah, that was topic of the show. No need
And
to
now it is time
go
to
on that.
press X for some news. Ding, 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 ding. And now we have what okay, so Alejandro, you can clarify this one for me. So there's a Bloomberg report that I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing that says
Uh-huh.
that it costs $450 to make the PS5.
Yes.
Now, with
So
your business mind, I want you to tell me, what do you think they're going to try marking it up to?
okay, so because I was trying to do some research of why it was costing $450 a man. Apparently, it's in regards to something like the cooling that they're trying to. I didn't call you Siri. Shut up. What the heck? You're hearing this?
Yeah,
Okay, that was interesting.
she got all
Yeah,
sassy at you.
yeah, I got such a yeah. All right, so yeah, apparently some of the cooling parts that they need for the console, especially with the innards of this thing, are being more expensive and more supply constrained than they are. So them putting all like when you put all the parts together to just build like the main box, apparently it's costing them $450, which is incredibly concerning if you're thinking about uh, a company trying to make a profit in some
Hmm.
way, because I was like because I was looking up and seeing, okay, so if this was for how much did the original PS4 cost them to like assemble to make?
Hmm.
$381 if I'm not
Uh-oh.
mistaken, and the console launched at 399, and I heard that to them was like a little bit of a loss because
Right.
they were only making what, like $18 for that.
Yep.
And obviously they were super successful because of them selling so much within the first. You remember the PS4 sold like 10
Hmm.
million units within like 10 months of when it came out, which was impressive for any console. uh, them saying that the assembly of this was $450 is like, this will be a $500 console probably. It's
At
gonna be
least.
500, yeah, at the very least, unless they're willing to eat
Yeah,
crap.
that's true.
If they're willing to eat crap on it, that because I heard because I was looking at one of the analysts that I was reading that apparently he had heard that the assembly of the Xbox Series X was $460 around that time. So that means that there is a chance that both these consoles will launch around the same price this time instead of one, and it will require to see who is willing to eat crap, but to make a loss on it. Because you know what was funny? Because I heard of for the PS3. Remember when the PS3 was like $600? Assembling that thing was like $800 to $900. So they were eating a lot of crap on the PS3, even at that higher price. So, which to me that was just corporate malpractice in making something that expensive and selling it that way. So yeah, the days of like, I was getting a console at a sweet spot of 399, I don't think it's gonna happen this time based on this because remember this is a Bloomberg report that reports is we're still in the phase where Sony is literally saying jack anything about it. But the thing is, when you're coming from Bloomberg, from the Bloomberg report,
Yeah.
that's a legit source. So at that price, Paul, especially with your coming nuptials coming, you getting the PS5 this year? Because at that price, I think I'm gonna wait probably if it ends up being that way.
I
What are
haven't
your thoughts?
decided. I told myself when the PS4 came out that you see. So here's my biggest motivation, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The availability of the consoles.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, when the PS4 came out, it was pretty much impossible to find it for like at least several months, if not up to
Mm-hmm.
like a year. Everybody was on
Um,
wait lists. It was taking forever to get
I
anything.
got mine 6 months later, so it was like the original launch was a little bit supply constrained, but they were able to like put it quicker because the demand was so dang high. But
Not
it would have
down by
been
me, or
okay.
not available down by me. It took
Mm-hmm.
people like just absolute months. We would get one in and sell it within like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if like the person that was on the wait list wouldn't come in, like there was somebody there like saying, "Hey, I'll give you literally like all the hundreds of dollars it costs to buy this thing," and we would just keep selling them, selling them, selling them. It would take like no time at all to get rid of them, and I think that just because of that, it makes me a little worried. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I want to just get it right at the start and not deal with the hassle.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like not going to have like a ton of games for it. I mean, the PS4 didn't either, but it
Yeah.
ended up working out.
So here's the difference though. PS5 is backwards compatible. So every
It
game that you're freaking
is
on right
true.
now, it's gonna work. So you're not gonna have because that was a problem with PS4 originally was it wasn't backwards compatible. So everything that was available at launch was like 20 to 22 games, and that was it for a while. Especially in the exclusive side of like the games just for PS4 at launch, it was only Killzone Shadowfall, Game of the Year Knack, and this and Resogun on PS Plus, which was
Yeah.
like that side scroll, which was really it was probably the best game of the lot when it came to exclusive because it was really fun. Killzone was like half of it was great, the other half wasn't, and Knack was just a bad game, even though the sequel was a little better. But uh, it makes me really curious now for this launch, especially if one of these companies has to budge. And what's funny is that apparently I don't know if we talked about it last week that they were saying that they were waiting to hear from Microsoft's price before they announce their price. Maybe
Hmm.
that's what's gonna happen. Maybe they really are willing to eat crap in this one. If they actually, especially if reportedly it's costing them 450 to make this one, the Xbox Series X is 460. That sounds like a $500 console for me. So
Right.
and reportedly the Xbox Series X is supposed to be a smidge more powerful when it comes to like teraflops, even though some apparently just based on some rumors, the some of the architecture how they're building the PS5, it makes it also more power efficient. That makes it get as many as great results with a little bit of lesser power, which supposedly should allow it to launch at a lower price.
Hmm.
Because if both systems launch at the same price, I feel Microsoft takes this one. If they go out and saying that this is the most powerful console and all that,
Hmm.
uh, it's just gonna happen. But if Sony launches lower and they're willing to eat the cost, which it makes me wonder how much, because the difference that I feel Microsoft as a company has more money in their pockets than Sony. Sony until the PS4 era became profitable again. During PS3, they ate a lot of crap. They were in the red for so long, especially because Sony's not just PlayStation; they were the TV division, all of that, like all the Sony electronics. And in electronics, they've been like, kind of like stumbling for a while. Remember the Vio laptops?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the Walkman, all of that. So they were making. They had a lot of. They had little stakes in different markets. So I wonder if all of that was putting it in the red. While PlayStation was like the only thing that eventually became really profitable for them.
Hmm.
But since PlayStation is not PlayStation and Xbox is like Xbox is its own division now under Microsoft, and Microsoft has deep pockets.
Hmm.
I feel Microsoft is in the better position to eat crap in order to sell this thing. But then remember the whole thing with Microsoft last week, where they were like, "Oh, our competitors, we don't see them being Sony and Nintendo anymore. Our true competitors will be Amazon and Google because of our investments with cloud streaming and all that." Um, it really it really makes me curious to see who's the one that budges because man, this is we're reaching a standstill now, and this is really exciting because PS5 reveal is not gonna happen this month. I already let go of that thought like it wasn't back in 2013. It's just not gonna happen, especially them not being at E3. I feel they might do it in May if I'm a betting man, but if they're really waiting to see what because Microsoft already confirmed they're still going to be at E3, even though E3 is still like losing a lot of important people there as it slowly dies into irrelevancy. Uh, it makes me wonder: are they going to release or announce like show the PS5 without a price? Then they're going to wait for Microsoft to show the price, and then a week later they're going to be, "Oh, this is how we're pricing it." Um, it really feels like that, and it's really interesting because we know that I truly believe Sony is not gonna dominate this next generation like they did this one. This one
Hmm.
was a perfect storm for them. It was the perfect storm of the Wii U being a complete total disaster, Microsoft stumbling out of the gate, uh, and them saying the right things when it came out, especially when they were the ones coming from behind. Nintendo's now doing really well with the Switch, and Microsoft is like saying all the right things now and being all consumer friendly. It's now with this price of assembly, man, we're really gonna be talking about this a lot, are we? to see to all these rumors and speculation.
Yeah,
Uh,
we will see how that plays out. Honestly, I'm not one for rumors. I don't put a
yeah,
lot of stock in any of it. I
exactly.
like at this point, it's like maybe the PS4, PS5 is going to blow out the gate again. Maybe they're going to
Hmm.
struggle, but in the end, we're
Hmm.
still spinning our wheels and we're not going anywhere.
Exactly,
So,
because everyone's in the standstill. Remember that the tweet that I showed that Distracted posted that this is like the longest drought we have had of like a Nintendo Direct in history, because
hmm,
the last time that we had like a proper Nintendo Direct was September 4th of last year. So October
jeez,
4th, November 4th, December 4th, January 4th, February 4th. It's been 5 months. And no, PJ, I don't care what the F you say, the Smash Directs don't effing count. Those don't count. Screw that. The actual, an actual, the actual directs, we're like, none of these companies are saying anything. It's incredible how quiet they are in a year like this.
yeah. I don't
But
know what they're planning on doing. Maybe they're just gathering up all their stuff for one like really big, solid plan to release a bunch of things. Maybe I don't know. But yeah.
Oh, but also, I forgot to mention this. If you see our document,
Mhm. I'm seeing it
because
now.
yeah, so this is also. I wonder if this also has something to do with this. Why they're a little extra quiet on that. So do you know which country, Paul, is the country that assembles all the consoles?
Iceland.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
of course it's China.
Yeah, so Foxconn is the place where they like assemble the consoles, and then it's a place called Foxconn, literally. Even
Gotcha.
though that sounds like a 007 James Bond, like uh, some sort of like villain lair, is really called Foxconn. So Paul, what has yeah? No, it literally is
No,
called
you
Foxconn.
butchered the last one. It just sounded really dirty. Anyway,
So
continue, Alejandro.
so Paul, for the people that may not know, which I doubt they had, considering how big this whole thing has been, what's been happening in China?
Well, they had that little spout with the that little strangely named virus lately.
Yeah, coronavirus, which apparently started spreading when Chinese people were eating bats. Which to which
What?
to that I say, why would you eat bats? Bats.
How? Wait, where did you hear that?
I was just look it up because apparently that's how it started. Because this is an epidemic that only starts if you're like in close contact with someone, and it started when they ate. Apparently that thing, because if you're like it's breathing around, apparently it doesn't spread like that. It's just in direct contact. How do you have direct contact with something? By eating it. So apparently, yeah, apparently they were eating bats, and that's how it started. So it's like
Huh.
so this huge epidemic's like escalating like considerably. I think it's already claimed the lives of a thousand people there, which is
Jeez.
incredible. Especially, yeah, even though in the context of China being like the place with the biggest population in the world, that's like 1,000 may be like 10 for us, but it's still 1,000, and it's escalating to so many points that a lot of factories are like sending people, evacuating people from working and all of that. And apparently, like for example, there was a report that in the Nintendo Switch was going to be supply constraint for the next couple months because they also build it there in China. And there was being reports that this could also end up affecting the assembly and the creation of PS5 and Xbox Series X
Hmm.
consoles if this is not if this isn't controlled anytime soon, because you have to start assembling those things way ahead of time. And if they're already if they're already this constrained by it because of this unfortunate epidemic, which is like slowly spreading in the different countries
Right.
somehow, it's like maybe it will happen that the reason why they're being quiet is because maybe they're taking into consideration that this virus is really affecting their assembly line.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're reconsidering the launch date of this because they both said that they're launching this fall. Now the big question is, are they with this thing? And
Right.
I wouldn't blame them for doing that because I'd rather people be safe than being there like maybe like trying to evade and dodging the coronavirus just by assembling a freaking console. I'd rather them delay it that way. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll see. That's something that I think it was Game Industry that biz that found a report regarding that, or like some analysts mentioned it to them. It's like, yeah, because of this, don't be surprised if that ends up happening.
Hmm.
That this thing has become like a complete blindside to these companies for their next generation plans, which understandably so. But again, this is just kind of like it hasn't been 100% confirmed, but this was reported by Game Industry Biz and also the analysts. So it's always good to heed their warning, as it were. So,
True that.
eh, so enough console talk, Paul. So the next story. So during Game of the Year, I kind of mentioned something in the likes of that when we were talking about some of the worst games of the year. But
I'm
after
not
a
letting you
previous,
go on a rant about this, by the way.
no, no, oh no, because I already ranted. I already ranted enough for that one.
Yeah.
So after the previous Kotaku report from last year, where that originally mentioned that was in the cards, BioWare finally came forward with an official statement that they're officially revamping and overhauling Anthem. So they're pulling the Final Fantasy 14 A Realm Reborn thing that they did. Because remember that thing with Final Fantasy 14? You ever heard of
Mhm.
that? So originally, the Final Fantasy 14 MMO launched in 2010, completely horrible and busted. And then Square Enix completely shut down the servers and all of that, and said we're taking the time to make this right.
Mhm.
And a few years later, it came out as A Realm Reborn, which to this day is considered now one of the best MMOs that you can play. And it took like hard work for them to completely revamp and make it right. So obviously, Bioware has been eating a lot of well-deserved crap by the completely busted launch that was Anthem. So especially like the horror stories of the crunch that was like soul crashing for a lot of the developers, and lack of leadership and vision for that game. And that's like the biggest problem thing, you that the game doesn't have like a core thing. So they're finally saying, yeah, confirming that we're like overhauling thing. And then they said we're canceling all our season plans. So Paul, originally when they launched the game, when it was so empty, they were like, don't worry, because we have our content coming. Here's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Act 1 never started. Act One never
Right.
started, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we're moving to seasonal content for like holidays and all of that." as we're trying to fix it, now they're even canceling the seasons. So that game is like going into some sort of life support until they fully overhaul it. And I just keep saying it. Is it even worth it at this point? I feel Anthem is just damaged goods. But hey, apparently they still want to try it, and which is more than I can say than what they did with Mass Effect Andromeda,
Hmm.
which they just quickly cleaned up and completely threw it to the trash. Compared to this, apparently they really they have more of a stake with this new IP than they did with Mass Effect, and that to me is like, I feel you should have done this more with Mass Effect because that was way more beloved. And if you actually like stuck with it, you would have like you already had goodwill before with the previous trilogy. Anthem doesn't even have that, so they're like really starting from the very bottom and looking up at Mount Olympus for this overhaul. I don't know what's gonna happen, but just wanted to mention it because that was like one of the bigger news this week. So you can take this one, other Paul.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm not 100% sure on like what this one means exactly, but I'll go ahead and read it out,
Really?
and we can kind of discuss it. So,
Mm-hmm.
the new 2K studio, led by former Dead Space and Sledgehammer Games, Michael Condrey.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So he was named the 31st Union, and they're working on a new game now.
Yes.
Union, as in like business wise, like they
Yeah.
formed a union.
No, the game, the studio is called 31st Union,
Oh,
and
I
it's
was
like
like, I don't know what that means.
yes. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
it's funny. I don't know why they use the word union because uh, you don't want to be associated with like work unions and all of that. But hey, apparently that's the name that they decided. So Michael Condrey was next to Glenn Schofield, where what was one of the original creators that worked on Dead Space One, and then they went to Activision to create Sledgehammer Games, which helped work on Modern Warfare 3. They did Advanced Warfare and Call of Duty World War II, and then they both left
Mm,
for unforeseen reasons. Apparently there was some scuttlebutt with like the heads with the Activision head because Call of Duty World War II was a game that they didn't want to make originally because they wanted to continue Advanced Warfare,
mhm.
but apparently they forced their hands to make World War II because market research that Activision had made dictated that a lot of people were already sick and tired of futuristic Call of Duty games.
Which was a
So
smart move on their part.
it was because it actually revived the sales. So it was like you can say anything about Activision. I really don't like them as a company, but they're really great bean counters there. So when they really saw the writing on the wall, their market research was right because Call of Duty World War II sold like gangbusters, especially compared to Infinite Warfare, which to me was a better game, IMO. Um, but it's still like the market spoke and they really took into World War II. But that was apparently not a game that they really wanted to make, and the scuttlebutt led them to leave Sledgehammer, which originally they were like they were originally they were saying, oh yeah, we left Sledgehammer because we got new positions in Activision. Literally a couple months later they left. They completely left Activision, so you can read between the lines of what happened there. The other guy's Glenn Schofield. Apparently he's like working on like a story for PUBG, and then this guy Michael Condrey is like working on a new IP. So like 2K, so for people obviously, so 2K is publishes games like Borderlands. They did the Mafia. They publish games also like Mafia, Bioshock, and 2K is also under Take Two, which also owns Rockstar Games. So they have all this, and obviously the cream of the crop, NBA 2K, which is their biggest cash cow in good and bad ways. Um, 2K has been one of those studios that really downscaled their releases very early into this generation. Like you barely hear a game coming from 2K. Just last year, like it was Borderlands 3, and that's Gearbox. They only published it, but like 2K developed games other than the NBA 2K series is like they're one of the companies that really scale back. And apparently the rumor is that a lot of companies last time they were not sure PS4 and Xbox One were gonna hit, so they were keeping developing games to the all console as much as they could. And then the new consoles came out, and they're like, "Oh crap! People really wanted these new consoles." So it seems like the scaling back that a lot of these companies are doing is to be ready for the new generation to be like, okay, we're not gonna be asleep at the wheel again because people have shown consoles are not dead. People are still want new consoles, so we're gonna pack it with games. So that's why that's why this new IP will be from Michael Condrey. So, and speaking of other games that also will be ready for like the next generation, to this week we had a reveal trailer
Yes,
from a Square Enix game. That's also by by People Can Fly, which is the people that did Bulletstorm and Gears of War Judgment, called Outriders. Then this is one of the few games that has officially been announced for both current and next gen console. So Paul, we got our second PS5 and Xbox Series X game here with Outriders.
and it's another looter shooter.
Yes, oh yes, and it's a third person
I'm
co-op
so
RPG shooter with the
done with
and
these.
yes, and so it's you can see the creativity is still at rock bottom, but
uh,
but you know what, Paul? I read because a lot of people want to play the game. When you just look the trailer at it, it looks generic AF.
yeah,
But people say that it really plays. It's really fun, and I don't doubt it because People Can Fly make really fun shooters. Like Bulletstorm is like a very chunky, really fast paced shooter, and you can also play it on current gen console that came out with a remaster that came out like 3 years ago, and was also on PlayStation Plus if you didn't download it. And it says that imagine it's like a Destiny, but look with the perspective of Gears of War, but with powers like it's X-Men. That's what they were saying. So that's what caught my tickle my fancy, because oh, powers X-Men, I like the X-Men.
right.
And on a third person shooter, and I tend to be a bigger fan of third person shooters than first person shooters. Destiny is like my big exception to the rule in that way.
Hmm.
So, and to me the thing that's notable is that we're finally starting seeing games have the PS5 and Xbox Series X logo. So them announcing it like that means that there's going to be launch games. So we're slowly starting to see what the libraries may look like other than the usual suspects, because of course there's going to be a Madden, of course there's going to be a Call of Duty, of course there's going
Of
to be an
course.
Assassin's Creed. Like it's like that's like that's as obvious as the sky is blue and water is wet. So seeing all these other kind of like, okay, it's cool, at least we're seeing it, because remember PS5 also has that exclusive called Godfall by the publishing by Gearbox, and that's another looter, but that's like more of a sword thing. So that makes it a little bit more unique because it's not just shooting; it's actually more like a slasher. So, but hey, now we got the shooter that's gonna be a looter. So we got both. We got both covered. And this is now, and this is another late edition because I forgot that this was also announced, but because it actually makes me excited to go back to it. The Division 2, the game that I said that was better than the original, but I liked it less because of the setting. They announced an expansion this week that's coming on March 3rd called Warlord of New York. And just you mentioned New York, and I'm already very interested because New York is a better city than Washington D.C. for that game. And I would recommend you watch it. It actually looks really cool because it feels like they're revamping a lot of stuff from the Division Two.
Does it?
And yeah, they said that they're reworking how the class system works, which was the thing that I thought was a little bit of a step back from the original. Yeah, the shooting was better, but the class system was a little bit weaker, IMO. And it being on the better, and apparently it's not even gonna be the same streets that you were running on New York, because of course New York is not just Manhattan. There's Brooklyn, there's all of this other stuff.
Hmm.
So there you're going to a different place in New York, but it's gonna look as like decrepit and like eerie as the original, which was the best part of the original game. So that's coming out on March 3rd, and you know that the Division was sold for $3 this week.
Wait, what?
The Division 2 was being sold digitally for $3. This like
Honestly, that kind of hurts my soul because I spent 60 on it.
yeah, but hey, we spent it at when it came out, so that's on us.
Yeah.
So what I did was I did buy it for Xbox for $3 because I think I'm gonna be maining that game on Xbox, because you know that the Division 2 weighs like 100 gigabytes on PlayStation 4, and on Xbox One it's 40.
What?
Yes, I don't know why. The file size on the PS4 version was like astronomically higher than the Xbox One version, even though both games looked similar. I saw the graphics comparison. Oh, this look literally the same. So I was like, okay, if I want to keep playing the Division, I'd rather just do it on Xbox because it's not gonna take half of my like 1/10 of my hard drive space. So
Right.
yeah, so this is on March 3rd. So the gaming tsunami just got a little higher for me because I really want to play this thing.
Right.
So yeah. Any thoughts on that, Paul? Do you think you may
Uh,
go back to the Division
honestly,
2? Yeah, or you're
No.
done with it. Yeah, you're done with it. Yeah.
That ship has sailed. I'm
Mhm.
really frustrated at Ubisoft in general.
Mhm.
Um, I still love what they've done with For Honor. I love
Mhm.
what they're continuing to do with Siege.
Mhm.
Even like Assassin's Creed,
Assassin's
I can
Creed. Mhm.
respect it, even if I'm not like really into it anymore. Because
Mhm.
for anybody listening, of course, last time we kind of spoke on it, I was trying out Odyssey,
Mhm.
and once again, couldn't get into it for very long, but it was still
Mhm.
fun.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I have to take a break from all the stuff
Yeah.
that they're doing at this point until they give me something that's unique again. I mean, even
Mhm.
the two games they said were unannounced yet. I mean, we know
Mhm.
one of them is Assassin's Creed. We
Yeah.
know one of them is the that Gods and Monsters thing, whatever that
Mhm.
was called.
Yeah, Gods and Monsters.
And then there was something else, and everybody's
Watch
like, "Oh, it
Dogs.
might be Splinter Cell,"
Yeah.
but
But they
yeah,
say it's
it's
not gonna be. This is not gonna be
right.
because
They said it's not.
they said I think this came out last week if I'm not mistaken that over the next calendar year, the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, which starts on April of this year and ends in March of next year, they're going to be releasing 5 games, and 3 of those have already been announced. Watch Dogs Legion, which is the one that you want to play, Gods and Monsters, which to me is the one that looks more interesting. It's Rainbow Six Quarantine, which is
Oh
them
yeah, that's the
yeah,
other
yeah, which is them like emphasizing more the co-op of that game and making it kind of like an outbreak thing. So it's gonna be like Left for Dead almost, because they did experiment with that a little in a limited fashion on Rainbow Six
Oh
Siege
yeah,
around on
I
year
played
three.
that a lot, and I'm
It was a
realizing
good.
because a lot of people thought it was going to be like the test for a game type in Siege, but now I'm realizing it was a test for their own main game, and they got the
Yeah,
green light after it was a success.
exactly.
Um,
And I'd say good for them because Siege can be the competitive multiplayer thing with terrorists on there, and then you have this
yeah,
other thing. And you remember when I told you there's some companies have been wanting to release more games? I think this is a good way to do it for them. And it looks to me that's a unique thing. Uh, Left for Dead style thing. That's not something Ubisoft's doing. So props to them on doing that. And then the two unannounced games are gonna be the Assassin's Creed that we know is gonna be the Viking theme based on
mhm,
leaks, and apparently there's gonna be another Far Cry, which is
that's what it was.
yeah, so I don't know if it's just gonna be called Far Cry 6, but just last year we got Far Cry New Dawn, and to me that
I
was
didn't
like
even
one
bother with
Far that was one Far Cry too many. So, but yeah, those are the 5 games that they're releasing. But hey, remember the board that they created for like the people are gonna be handling the different series has just been formed. So we might start seeing the fruit of that labor after this fiscal year because these were all projects that were started before.
that.
So,
Hmm.
and whatever they end up fixing with Breakpoint, which I don't think that'll ever happen, but
Yeah,
moving
same.
on. So, and this is yeah, just something that I wanted to. This was a final news story that just kind of came up because the big story of this happened last August, but just now seeing now the details of that, I'm like, man, that was a sweet get. Yeah, especially at this kind of price. So, Sony last year around Gamescom, they acquired Insomniac Games, which to many people was like, oh, finally they tied the knot, because you know that Insomniac has worked with Sony making exclusives for over 20 years, since back in the original PlayStation, but they were never owned by Sony. They were never owned by Sony, but you would associate them because that's how many exclusives they made. So, like, they originally made a first-person shooter called Disruptor in PS1. Then they did Spyro the Dragon, the original trilogy in
Yeah, true.
PS1. Then they found their best, most known success on PS2 with Ratchet and Clank, which they did like 5 games on PS2, the original trilogy, one called Ratchet Deadlocked. And I did they do a racing game? No, they didn't do a racing game. Then they continued the trilogy on PS. They did the PS3, the Ratchet and Clank Future games, as well as the Resistance trilogy, which is a personal favorite of mine. Um, and after that, during the PS3 era, is when the Sony and Insomniac relationship started kind of like falling apart a little bit because they were not being owned by Sony, and Sony was investing more on their own studios. Because at that point, they finally bought Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch and all these studios. So when they were making Uncharted and Infamous and all that, and Sonic was still making exclusives for them, but
Mm.
they were still independent. And Insomniac was saying, "Hey, we've been working with PlayStation for a while. We kind of want to experiment a little bit and work on other stuff." So they teamed up with EA and made this game called originally was going to be called Overstrike, which was like a cartoony squad-based shooter that looked really cool, and then that game got focus tested to death by EA, and then became a very generic game called Fuse. I don't know if you ever heard of
Oh
Fuse.
yeah,
Yeah, that
I
unfortunately, like,
forgot about that game.
yeah, everyone has for good reason, because this is Insomniac's worst game, because it was a game that stripped all the cool personality of Insomniac. Insomniac is about the quirkiness and all of that.
Mhm.
The only time that they kind of veered off path was with Resistance, when they made something a little bit darker. But hey, you gotta like you gotta also always have variety with like your
Mhm.
quirky stuff and your dark stuff, kind of like with Naughty Dog with Uncharted and The Last of Us. Like they're more pulpy thing, and Last of Us more serious thing. But then Insomniac, yeah, Fuse completely bombed, and then they did a limited deal with Microsoft where they were gonna publish Sunset Overdrive. But Insomniac would own the IP of Sunset Overdrive. But Sunset Overdrive was just a game that the Microsoft audience and the Xbox audience just didn't take to, because they're more used to other stuff. So that game bombed commercially. So that was the end of that. And then Sony, after their long break up, or just kind of taking their time, they kind of came together because Marvel came together, and they offered them to do Spider-Man. And Spider-Man is the best-selling PlayStation exclusive of all time, ever.
Really?
And yeah, Spider-Man is the best-selling exclusive that
Huh.
Sony, for any Sony PlayStation console in the system's entire 25 slash almost 30-year history.
Hmm.
That's how much that Spider-Man game sold, and apparently it sold so well that it finally gave. After Insomniac went through this whole tirade of trying to see, trying all different stuff, they realized that they had their best partner was always Sony, and then Sony tied the knot and bought them, and they
Huh.
only bought them for 229 million. Which, just for context, you know that Rare was bought for by Microsoft like over 300 million, and Rare has
Jeez.
barely done anything for them like of note. Like for 229 million, especially after they sold almost 13 million copies just of Spider-Man. Uh, you really, I feel Sony like that. That was like a really wise investment on Sony, and I know they have been wanting to buy Insomniac for a long time, but
Mhm.
Insomniac was like, "We're not in the market. We're not in the market. We're independent. We're independent." I guess I think at the end money talks, and they finally saw the dollar signs. so
True.
so yeah. Or I wonder if them selling so much of Spider-Man alone allowed them to make themselves even more valuable to Sony, and put themselves at a better price than they were willing to sell, and they did it. So I honestly believe right now that Insomniac is there. I feel they're one of their better studios. Like
Mm.
the one studio that I'm more excited by, the more than almost anything whenever they announce something for PS5. So what are your thoughts, Paul, on Insomniac?
I was one of those people that thought they had bought them back when Spider-Man came out because I thought that
Mhm.
was the whole deal with that
Yeah,
personally.
yeah. It took a while before
But
they bought them. Mhm.
yeah, but I say absolutely. I think this is an amazing decision on Sony's part because they get this studio that has put out nothing but bangers
Mhm.
for decades now. I think that I'm really excited to see what happens in the future. It definitely cements even further that I'm definitely getting a PS5
Mhm.
because I mean
The
I
studio.
really love what Xbox
Mhm.
has been doing, Microsoft has been doing with the Xbox, and I understand like the power that it
Mhm.
has, and that they're really trying to come back. And I love Halo as much as I can, but just with the amount of exclusives, unless that changes,
Mhm.
I'm definitely going back to the PS5, and this is just one more
Same.
nail in the coffin.
Same, because like Sony's exclusives are tried and true. You know their quality, and almost all of
Mhm.
them are always a Game of the Year contender for like so many years now. And you never see like a Game of the Year contender on Microsoft's part. Like they're building their catalog because they bought all the studios, so they're getting ready. But Microsoft still has to prove themselves. When
Mhm.
they're from AAA quality, only Gears of War 5 has been like their biggest, most notable one since like 2016. You know there's a problem there, and you can't just rely on gear on Xbox and on Halo and Gears forever. But I think they understand that, but because they just bought these studios, it's gonna take a longer time. So but because Sony already has improved, it's easy for us to remain loyal to them, right?
Yep.
They would just have to like catastrophically bomb out of the gate with the PS5 for us to like consider going elsewhere, or
Yep.
like considered coming late. But yeah, the exclusives are, to me, are the reason why I stay there, because they speak more to the gamer I like, which is like the single player story, well made story games. So, and they really have been even though I've been complaining a lot that they feel like they're doing the same kind of type of game, the quality speaks for themselves. So
Mhm.
why complain when they're so good? Yeah, you also only want a little bit more added. And I already got Dreams. So Dreams was like kind of okay, at least I got the unique one. Okay, go back to doing your other stuff.
Yeah, really. Um, but man, that's I'm just really excited to see what's going to go down. The only concern that I didn't even think about was the idea that the coronavirus may delay the console release.
Hmm.
That's very curious to me. Or they'll still release it, but it'll be once again limited
More
stock.
limited. Yeah.
And one more reason why I need to make sure that I pre-order that thing as soon as it goes live, so that
Same.
I can make sure I get my copy. Even then, like there are people, if I'm remembering right, that pre-ordered the console and
Hmm.
they just ran out, and they were just the people that weren't there midnight release just had to be put on the first waiting list. So
Hmm.
I'm not
By
about
the
to
way,
mess around with that.
and by the way, GameStop already is emailing people because they emailed me about
Mm.
pre-ordering the PS5. So
Really? So I
yeah,
might have to take a quick trip out there and
yes.
take a look.
Take a look.
Oh,
Even though the console hasn't been officially announced, they're already taking pre-orders. But that tells you how desperate they are because.
right. I was gonna say like they're trying to pick that up before they've even gotten the green light, which means they need the money.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I mean, like you technically hold on to it, but I guess like bringing in the money, $5 each, even that actually it's probably like 25 minimum for consoles. Now that I'm thinking
Hmm.
about it, so they got to pick that up and use it as quick as they can to stay above water.
Absolutely.
To last long enough. So, I mean, I still think they got maybe a couple of years left in them, depending on how extreme they are with the whole
Hmm.
127 hours. Like, are they going to cut the arm off or die? You know?
Yes, exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Remember, once the antimatter wave hits the New Orleans one, it's over. So, so let's keep hoping to see if they hold on before this
yeah.
before
I mean, they're trucking them
GameStop
off.
goes the
It's
merry
always
way.
packed in there. So I'm
Hmm.
hoping that it just stays and they hold out as long as possible, because I really want that to be an experience for people all
Hmm.
later on down the road. You know?
Yes. All right, Paul. So that's all for the gaming news, and let's. I think it's time for us to just to talk to our final topic.
Yes,
That's
it
over
is.
in our X reel. So press X for
Some movies.
yeah.
We are going to find a way to make this easier. I swear.
So, Paul, in this past week in the world of movies and entertainment, other than Parasite winning the Academy Award or slash Oscar, um, what was the big thing for you this week for the movies? Because I think it was also the same big thing for mine.
Yes, as of was it I think yesterday,
Yep.
we got a first look at the new Batman played by Robert Pattinson. Of still kind of reeling over that choice, but honestly, I'm starting to get into it. One reason is because of this little first look action. It is basically just a slow, deep red light, almost like the Daredevil opening theme,
Mm-hmm.
of this kind of spin around partially of the new Batman outfit, very clearly showing the new the Batman logo. Is very mechanical, made, somebody said, out of the gun that
Mm-hmm. That.
killed his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Which I never wondered, like I always wondered how he managed to track down that gun after
Yeah.
the fact, but yeah, who
So
knows.
I was reading around on that there's a version. There's like how there's so many versions of Batman comics and all that.
Oh yeah.
There is a very specific version that he did that. He tracked down the gun from Joe Chill that killed his parents, and he melted it and made it the bat metal thing from his chest. And say
Right.
and you can probably find the comic circulating around. I'll find you because I saw a screenshot when that happened. I was like, oh, that's cool. That it's actually because a lot of people are like, ooh, he put the gun that killed his parents in his chest, so edgy and metal, and people immediately started replying to those kinds of comments
Right.
with the comic where he melted it and put it
Hmm.
there. So I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of cool knowing that that's the context of some
Right.
things.
Well, I was
So
aware of it. I was just kind of interested in the hat. It still kind of looks like parts of a gun.
hmm
Um,
yeah, that's the difference because in the comic it's just straight the symbol. In
right.
that one, it has more a mechanical look, so for it to be a little bit more overt,
Hmm.
that is his symbol. And to me, I think the thing that was more curious for me with the costume design that we were seeing is that it reminded me of the Batman Arkham Knight costume. Like it had a little bit of like some highlighted edges
Yeah.
that the like the Batman super suit that you wore on Arkham Knight is. So
Hmm.
I thought that was an interesting choice because the Ben Affleck Batman suit was more modeled on the Dark Knight Returns version of the suit.
Yeah.
So
Like.
so it's interesting. So I feel it's a good choice because
Mhm.
I don't want the Batman suits to look different. Like I appreciated that the Ben Affleck Batfleck suit was different from the Nolan suit, just as the Nolan suit was different from Nipplegate, and also from
The Michael Keaton.
yeah that from the Michael Keaton one. So and can you believe that it's been like because this movie is supposed to come out next year? It's been
Mm,
9 years since we had the last proper Batman movie. Because Batman versus Superman doesn't count. That was a
yeah.
crossover,
That
same
wasn't
as
really a
Justice,
Batman movie.
same as Justice League. Even though Batman arguably was probably the best part of those movies, but it's still
Hmm.
I still don't consider Batman. In fact, it's so funny to I just remember actually the last Batman movie that we got was the Lego Batman movie in 2017,
Oh
which
wow.
was actually really great. The
I
Lego
will
Batman
agree with
movie
that.
was
Anybody listening,
legitimately great.
go watch that. Laugh your butt off.
Oh
It's
man, it's
great.
just seeing like the clips of the Adam West thing, like
Oh,
so,
dude.
just every self-deprecating humor of every single version of Batman is so freaking perfect.
The peop I feel like whoever wrote that and put all those little Easter eggs in there needs to be the actual people that write the next Batman movie
Well, I
because they
think
clearly
Matt,
know what they're talking about.
yeah, I think because this new Batman movie is directed by Matt Reeves, who is the guy that directed the last two Planet of the Apes movies, the uh,
Oh.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War on the Planet of the Apes, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. Because a different director did the first one, the one that had James Franco and Draco Malfoy from from Harry Potter. That was Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So, and those last two Apes movies were really great. They were really well directed and all that, and it had a great style on its own. And kind of like I was mentioning earlier, how I really appreciate directors whose visual style and identity are shine in its visuals and its
Hmm.
directing instead of just being part of just like an assembly line of movies. So I feel he is a really interesting choice. I will forever remain sad that remember when Ben Affleck um, was still kind of attached to be on this. He was supposed to direct and play Batman. He
He was
like
gonna
that.
direct.
Yeah, he was both gonna be the actor and also the director. And the script that he was writing was being co-written by DC head honcho Jeff Johns, which has
Oh.
written some of the best comics that DC has ever had, like most recently Doomsday Clock. And also Jeff Johns was the one that helped spearhead the Flash TV show over on the CW, while also kind of helping on air. Kind of gave the blessing to the CW to start the Arrowverse, and wrote a couple episodes of Arrow before spinning off and creating Flash. Because he also wrote the Flash Rebirth comic, which is what reestablished Barry Allen as the Flash. Also,
Hmm.
everything that Jeff Johns writes, I tend to always be fully on board, especially because to me, I know that Johns really has that special touch because even the Titans show, that infamously had that horrible trailer with
Oh yeah.
the F Batman thing.
I know
He
what
was
you're
an
talking
executive
about.
producer on that show, and when you actually watch the show and see some of the episodes that he wrote, he made that tone work. And he made that tone feel more in line with what you expect from the characters, or someone that understands the characters while still making it fit into a darker version of them instead of the Batman v Superman making it all dark while missing the point. Like how great would it have been to have the same Batman v Superman, but be the beacon of hope while everyone else was cynical about him instead of him being the
Hmm.
cynical bastard that he was there. So Jeff Johns is that guy, and he was writing the script, but apparently he was co-writing the script with Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck was saying that he was not gonna do it if he didn't feel satisfied with the script, and he was being put like a deadline that they kind of wanted that Batman movie to happen, and it just was not gonna happen. So that's why he tapped out. So
Dang,
we will, yeah. It's I will always say that I feel he deserved better.
he
Ben
did.
Affleck, yeah, he really did. Like
He
he
needed his own movie.
exactly he needed that his own movie to shine, and I think also another thing that I heard was when he was also writing that script, he was finishing his own film, his one of his latest films that he directed. He was one of his own projects that bombed commercially, and that was also a Warner Brothers movie. So I heard that that also shook him, kind of like shook his confidence,
Hmm.
because of the reception for that. Because let's not forget, not that long ago, he won like the Academy Award for like best director and best movie for Argo, back in 2012. So like he has chops as director. It's just it's unfortunately how that early era of the DCEU where it was not planned and all that, how great could it have been, because it had all the trappings, it had
Hmm.
everything for it to be great. But hey, at least it's becoming good, and I have all high hopes for this Batman movie. I do wonder. It really makes me wonder: is it going to be a DCEU movie, or is it going to be more in the style of the Joker? That's more of an Elseworld style. How we still have, because that's the good thing that DC is doing, is that they're doing both things. They're doing movies that connect with each other, and then they're doing the one offs, which to me it's like the best thing about comics, having both. Why not have
Hmm.
both instead of having everything connected? It's why I could never really get into Agents of Shield, because initially them bootstrapping that show to be like it's all connected to the MCU, and the MCU pretty much always ignoring it literally at every turn, while the show was still kind of like trapped in that.
Yeah.
It always felt like it was a D-lister show, even though it was pretty good in its later seasons. Season 4 was my favorite, because it was the season that was most divorced from that and didn't feel like too bootstrapped to having to tie in the MCU.
Yeah.
I feel it's always good to have either things that connect and also things that don't connect, just for to have a little bit more creative freedom. It's why comics have been as successful as they have been, because there's always that one writer that will have a unique take. So
Hmm. Very
so
true.
there, yeah, so yeah, I'm really excited for that Batman movie, and in fact it made me eager to go replay the Batman games. uh yeah, in fact
Yeah.
I'm gonna be playing DC Universe Online, probably, because that's
Yeah,
like one
you
DC game
mentioned
that
that earlier, and what was that thing that you said they were working on?
uh the current thing. So this is just an offhand, just for our listeners out there. This is not a conversation we had in the podcast, but it was like I was mentioning how I was like toying around just in random conversation with our buddy Zach,
Hmm.
just in our behind the scenes chat, because our own Zach, he's pretty much our resident DC super fan. I'm also, as you probably know, like Paul likes his DC characters. I like them too. Big fan of the TV shows myself. Um, and Zach, especially, he's so all in on the Batman lore. And in DC universe, I've recently found out that they're adapting the Dark Knight's metal, which is like that 2017 crossover about the dark multiverse and like all these evil versions of Batman led by a demon named Barbados. And it's a really cool story, because it like hits on the and to the core of the origins of Batman in a very profound way and almost metaphysical way.
Hmm.
And that's part of the MMO right now. And I think Paul was actually surprised when I told him that DC Universe Online is still going. But
Yeah,
that's
I
a
honestly thought it had died a long time ago.
yeah, but it died on PS3, but the PS4 and Xbox One versions and now Switch
Uh,
versions are still alive and kicking.
so
That's
Alejandro, real quick, for DC Online, is that like you pick your own, you make your own person, or you're
yes.
picking an existing? Okay.
Yeah, how it works, kind of like the backstory of that game was that so Brainiac took advantage of the heroes and villains kind of finding each other and just kind of invading and taking over a lot of the places of DC Universe, and he traps a lot of people. Like it traps like a bunch of citizens, and those citizens got put into like meta chambers that
Hmm.
gave them powers, and those meta
Okay.
chambers are you creating your character. And then
Oh, that's
Oracle
cool.
sends you either decide who you want your mentor to be, either in the villain or the hero side. So I had two characters, one for Superman and one for Batman. But you create your own character. You decide what kind of power you want to have, what kind of gender you want to have, and
Sick.
all of that. So it's like just thinking about it, it surprises me that I had not played it soon. Well, I had played it before. It's just that I never really stuck with it because it was at a time that I wasn't really into the idea of an MMO, because I think we've had that conversation that MMOs
Mhm.
can be like super complicated.
Oh
And
yeah.
boy, oh boy, especially one that has been running for 9 years as DC Universe Online. It's it's a yeah, because like that's like, for example, Destiny was my first crack in an MMO, even though that was like MMO light. It didn't
Right.
consider itself an MMO back when it launched, and it does now that Bungie owns it. But I'm kind of just in a DC kick, so, and that's like the one game because I played pretty much every DC game from this generation, both Injustice games, the Batman Arkham Knight, and replayed the Arkham Collection. There's been a surprising dearth of actual DC games, and then over on Marvel, we just got Spider Man. So
True.
yeah, I'd say, and apparently there's 36 episodes of worth of stuff that they have launched. So, boy, oh boy, that's it's a lot. I wonder if there's like at least a catch up mechanic, so I can at least play the things that I'm interested in. Because I was just browsing. In fact, when we were talking, they have also adapted the Teen Titans Judas Contract storyline. They have adapted
Oh
Justice
wow.
League Dark. Something about the Atlantean Wars also. So there's a lot of
Oh
things that they have
jeez.
adapted. So
That's a lot.
yeah, so it's like that's literally a DC fanboy's wet dream. So
It blows
and
my
it's
mind that nobody like has ever heard about it.
yeah, or
Whenever
more
you
like,
talk to
here's the thing with MMOs, especially the ones that go, if you're not World of Warcraft,
them.
you only know about this stuff if you're into this stuff. So like you just like me, that I'm so into Destiny, that I am so into like every week, seeing the weekly updates, seeing what if they have announced something, all that. I bet you top dollar the people are still playing DC Universe Online, which is a lot because that game is free to play. Um, I bet people have known about that. And the thing is that most mainstream websites eventually stop covering MMOs because it's just too much.
Right.
Um, and some websites decide that the best time to traffic on them is at the very beginning, and they just kind of let it happen in its way because it has its own audience and it's self-sustainable. They don't need the mainstream press to kind of be on top of that. So I don't blame you for not knowing. And it literally was just me, like just scrolling through my games, and I saw the image of Barbados,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Whoa!" Because I read Dark Knight's Metal like a couple weeks ago, like on the DC Universe app, just because I was like curious about it because of the just reading the Crisis on Infinite Earths after watching the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yeah, my weekly quota of Crisis.
Hmm.
um, that's also a story in that vein, and I just wanted to read more stories on that vein, and I read that one. So
Dang.
yeah, that's why I decided on that one. But yeah, I would recommend. Hey, it's 38 gigabytes to download. Maybe you can give it a shot. It's kind of jank,
Yeah,
but
maybe so. And what was that last thing that you were gonna say about it? Because I know that's a big draw for a lot of people
um
because it's free.
yes, exactly. Yeah, I was like, I kind of lost the train of thought and all of that.
I
But yeah,
realized
it's a
that.
free game. Yeah, it's a free game. It's been free on PS4 since the console launched, so it's been free for 7 years
Golly,
now.
that's crazy.
So, but it's still alive and kicking. So good for them. I like seeing that kind of stuff. Seeing that MMOs like that are still there for the people that really play it. So
Hmm.
it makes me excited for other MMOs like My Destiny. That it's on going into year 6. So let's see how much longer that one has. So Paul, I feel on this note, I think that's it for this week. So
I
where
think
can
we've
people
covered it
find you?
all.
Yeah, we covered it all. So and in lesser time than last week. So we're getting more efficient with this.
Yeah, really. Well, they can find me over at Twitch at Angel Sword 21. They can also find me on YouTube at Dork of Art. I have a new video going live of some shenanigans that me and some of my buddies had on Rainbow Six Siege.
Mhm.
Excuse me. They can find you at where?
They can find me on Twitter at a_Drosegovia, and also my Instagram Alejandro.segovia93. And yeah, and they can find any of our new content always in our YouTube channel here. This is the weekly kind of like the weekly update that the SoundCloud is still being worked on, but we've made some progress because we have just created we just created the SoundCloud account that's gonna host our all every episode of it, and we just need to reconvert them because these are all MP4 files. So we're trying to get it up so that it launches with a good catalog when it launches there in the into the podcast services. And yeah, that's the weekly update for that. So Paul, it's always a pleasure doing this with you. And until next time, always remember
Yes, indeed. Press X
to
to play.
play.